Jonah remembered the last sound he ever heard. It wasn't music. It wasn't his mother's voice. It was the scream of metal, a whistling roar from the sky, and then the world went quiet. He was 10. The bazaar was crowded. His kite was tangled in a vendor's stand. His mother had just shouted his name. And then, a shell landed. Everything flipped upside down. The doctor said he was lucky. The shrapnel missed his heart, they said. But they didn't talk about his ears. His world went mute. Not quiet, mute. Silence that pressed on his chest like a weight. At first, people pitied him. Then, they forgot him. In the mountain village above Kandahar, people didn't know how to raise a deaf child. The school had no sign language. The elders whispered, "He's cursed. Touched by war." The kids called him Ghost. They tossed stones at his feet just to see if he'd flinch. He didn't. His mother, Miriam, tried to teach him through her hands. She created gestures, drew in the dirt, shaped her love into touch. But she was one woman in a village that spoke with volume, not kindness. And so Jonah became invisible. But invisibility gave him a gift. He noticed things others didn't. He saw the cracks in the mosque's walls before they widened. He watched how men's hands trembled when they lied. He tracked birds before storms and soldiers before chaos. Jonah didn't listen with his ears anymore. He listened with his eyes. And the world? It was loud, if you knew where to look. It was winter when the soldiers returned. Their convoy thundered through the pass, dust spiraling behind them like ghosts. The children chased the Humvees, laughing. The elders frowned. War was routine now. Boots came and went. Jonah didn't run toward them. He watched from a rooftop, silent as always. He knew these men by their steps, by the way their uniforms creaked, by how their eyes scanned the village. One of them noticed him, Private Ellis. A 19-year-old with a sunburned neck and eyes that hadn't seen enough to be wise, but too much to be innocent. "That kid creeps me out," he muttered. The translator replied, "His name is Jonah. He can't hear you." Ellis scoffed. Then why is he always watching? But Jonah wasn't watching them. He was watching the ground. That night, the village was wrapped in a cold hush. Fog crawled in from the cliffs, and the stars blinked behind a veil of dust. Jonah couldn't sleep. Something was wrong. He walked alone, barefoot, coat too thin for the air. He passed the old olive grove. That's when he saw it. A shape, unnatural. A wire glinting in moonlight, buried near the road. Footprints. Unfamiliar tire tracks that didn't belong to villagers. A pile of rocks that had moved. His pulse thudded in his neck. He'd seen diagrams like this. He knew. An IED. And it wasn't alone. He didn't hesitate. He ran. Full sprint. Down the road, past the sleeping dogs, toward the checkpoint. The Americans shouted as he approached. "Back! Back! Stop there!" He dropped to his knees. Scraped the dirt. Drew with his fingers. A line. A square. A circle. Boom. One soldier raised his rifle. Another stepped forward. The translator arrived, breathless. He looked at the drawing. Then at Jonah's shaking hands. His eyes widened. Minutes later, Private Ellis and his team followed Jonah's map. They found 6 devices. Buried. Primed. Set to explode at dawn when their convoy was scheduled to leave. Jonah had saved them. That night, the fog didn't feel so heavy. And Private Ellis didn't look at Jonah like a ghost anymore. He looked at him like a guardian. The next morning, the soldiers didn't leave. They stayed. Because someone told them the village had changed. Jonah became the reason. The elders called a gathering. For the first time, Jonah sat in the center, not the shadows. Private Ellis stood beside him and said, not through the translator, but directly, his hand tapping his heart. He doesn't need to hear us. We need to hear him. Miriam, Jonah's mother, wept. Not because her son was no longer mocked, but because they were finally listening to the boy who had lived too long in silence. The school started teaching signs. The children stopped throwing stones. And Jonah, he taught them how to say mountain, safe, thank you. He didn't speak, but his presence echoed. On the soldier's last day, Private Ellis handed Jonah a pair of headphones. Jonah blinked. Ellis shrugged. They don't work. But maybe someday, you'll choose to hear the world again. Jonah smiled. He walked to the cliffs that night and sat where the wind spoke loudest. He closed his eyes. He couldn't hear it, but he could feel it. A breeze moved past his neck. A vibration through the rocks. A rhythm, soft, steady. Not war. Not fear. Just peace. And for the first time in years, Jonah didn't feel broken. He felt whole. Because even in a world that tried to forget him, he had saved it.